Before we begin, in 2019, YouTube was caught data mining children under the age of 13, violating the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies meant to dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. This video is not made for kids. It is not targeted at kids. It is not advertising to kids. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today we will be looking at the final part of the Locum Doctors Trilogy, The Secret History, released in June of 2015, written by Eddie Robson, directed by Barnaby Edwards. The Secret History stars Peter Davison as the Fifth Doctor, Maureen O'Brien as Vicki Pallister, and Peter Purvis as Stephen Taylor. Also featured in the cast is Lisette Antony. As always, I will be discussing spoilers, so if you have not heard The Secret History, I suggest you pause this video and go listen to it. I think the download is fairly cheap. I should have looked at that. And also, as an addendum to that, this is your only spoiler warning, I will be spoiling the Eighth Doctor adventures, just so you know where we are. And right off the bat, the Fifth Doctor, because this story sees the Fifth Doctor filling in for the First Doctor, and he is teaming up with Steven and Vicki. And right off the bat, I love their dynamic. Like, first of all, let me say, Sarah Kingdom is my favorite First Doctor companion, but the First Doctor, Steven and Vicki, is one of my favorite TARDIS teams. And right away, the story sets up the dynamic between this new Doctor, Steven and Vicki, so well. Steven, of course, being initially cautious of him, but Vicki more easily believing him, which kind of makes sense because, as I remember, I believe Vicki is somewhat psychic. Telepathic? I don't remember, but I think she has some sort of mental prowess. So, you know, she says things like, the Fifth Doctor comes off as doctorish, but you know, like I said, because of what's been established with Vicki, I do think that, you know, her mental abilities do have something to play with it. Unless I'm completely mistaken about that, in which case, please disregard everything I just said. And I also like Peter Davison's performance in this story. I mean, I will say this, he is my least favorite classic Doctor, but I find I like him more on Big Finish than I do in his era, because one of the problems I'm finding with the Peter Davison era, again, at least on TV, is that while I like the stories, the Doctor himself is just kind of bland, and, you know, all these years later, still playing the role, I feel Davison has improved tremendously, and I do like his performance, and part of why I like his performance, I will talk about more later in the story. Hopefully. Stick a pin in that. I will try to get back to it. I am kind of scatterbrained, so we'll see what actually happens. But anyway, this time around, what's interesting about this story is that the adventure the Doctor, Steven, and Vicki were on, the Fifth Doctor actually remembers happening. You know, and that really worries him because he says if he leaves the TARDIS, as soon as he goes on this adventure, he won't remember how it happened because instead of the First Doctor doing it, it will be him doing it. The story is really creative with time as well. And if you haven't figured it out yet from the way I'm talking about it, this is my favorite story in the Locum Doctors Trilogy. Anyway, this story sees... Wow, I just blanked hard. This story sees the TARDIS land in Ravenna during the reign of the Byzantine Empire. In the present day, this will be Istanbul, I believe. And during the time when General... What was his name? I have it open. Let me see what that general's name was real quick. I think it was Lysarius. I feel bad for forgetting his name because he's such a big character. Belisarius. There we go. And during the time when the Roman Empire was sort of falling to pieces, Lasarius, under the reign of Emperor Justinian, was trying to reunite the empire. So they meet Belisarius just as he captures Ravenna, and then he is called back to Constantinople. There it is. Wow, I'm really bad today. To help fight the Persians. And that's one thing I like about this story is First Doctor historicals are really grand in scope. They're very epic. And I mean that in terms of genre. You know, they are meant to be historical epics, like Ben-Hur, or that's the only one coming to my mind. And this story does really well, you know, like Marco Polo. Marco Polo is one of the famous missing First Doctor stories, but reconstructions exist. And, you know, Marco Polo was very grand in scale. Like, it started in the Tibetan mountain range, and then it had the First Doctor, Ian, Barbara, and Susan crossing through a desert, and eventually winding up in the palace of Kublai Khan. And this story does a lot of that. Like, it starts off in Ravenna, but it eventually has all the characters go to Constantinople, which is actually that journey is actually ghosted over real fast. And if I was to critique it, I think this story is too short at 4 parts, 2 hours long, because again, there's a lot that goes on. Like after Steven gets separated from the group and winds up captured and sent to Constantinople, the Doctor and Vicki follow after him. And they mention having been at sea for days. And, like I said, a lot of the stuff that happens in terms of this sort of grand scale the story is going for is ghosted over really quick. And had the story been longer than 4 parts, I think they could have developed it some. Which, you know, isn't necessarily a bad thing, because the historical epic really isn't the focus of the story. Along the way, along with Belisarius, we meet his legal advisor, Procopius, who the Doctor is a fan of. And again, he's a major character, but Procopius's accomplishments are ghosted over really quickly. Like, he wrote about Belisarius's conquests, and he wrote The Secret History. And we also meet Emperor Justinian and his wife, Theodora. And their dynamic it's fine. Like, in the making of, they said it was supposed to be a very comedic, bickering husband and wife kind of thing, but in fact, in the making of, a lot of the actors said this story was supposed to be really comedic, and that just went right over my head. The way the scene was directed, the way it was performed, it didn't come off as being comedic to me. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Interpreting it as dramatic, I think, at least for me, helped this story. We also meet Sophia, someone who is sort of made herself indispensable to the Emperor. And this person she's working with, a sort of, I don't know how to explain it, a medic named Quintus. He's the one who, after the Doctor and Vicki and Steven were separated, he's the one who found Steven. And we're going to get back to Quintus in just a minute, because that just reminded me of something. Again, like Last of the Cybermen, when the TARDIS team is split up, it's obvious there is a focus more on one companion than the other, because Vicki has so much to do, and like Zoe in Last of the Cybermen, Vicki is one of my favorite parts of this story. You know, every time it cuts to her, Maureen O'Brien gives a really great performance here, and every time the story cuts to Vicki in particular, I'm just really engaged by what she's doing. I'm sort of fascinated to see how the plot is evolving. Meanwhile, Steven is sort of just stuck in the same place. You know, he's trying, without realizing that the Doctor and Vicki came after him, he's trying to find a way to get back to Ravenna. And that involves him working at the Hippodrome, this famous ancient arena, and just as plague is breaking out. And Steven's good, Peter Purvis is also good, but it's obvious there's not a lot for him to do in the story. And now I can talk about Quintus. And what has been going on in this trilogy. And again, we're getting into the spoilers now, so this is your last warning. Quintus is the meddling monk, played by Graham Garden. And he has been doing this, he's been perpetuating this entire trilogy to get revenge on the Doctor. You know, he's been working with Sophia, who it turns out is half human and a time sensitive, and she has a unique relationship with time. And this incarnation of the monk is played by Graham Garden, who I talked a little bit about in some of my unboxings, but he is my favorite monk. And it's weird because I don't know why he is, you know, like with the other Time Lords, I can always explain why they're my favorites. Like, I can explain why Colin Baker is my favorite Doctor. I can explain why Siobhan Redmond is my favorite Ronnie. I can explain why Derek Jacobi is my favorite Master. But when it comes to the monk, I just know, like, gut feeling, intuition, what have you, that Graham Garden is my favorite. But I cannot put my finger on why. Anyway, as I said, Graham Garden originally showed up in the Eighth Doctor Adventures. He showed up when the Doctor was traveling with Tamsin Drew. And what happened is him and Tamsin eventually parted ways, and the Eighth Doctor started traveling with Lucy Miller again. And in that time, the monk started traveling with Tamsin. Around this time, the Daleks forced the monk into helping them do the Dalek invasion of Earth again, but bigger. And as stupid as that sounds, Lucy Miller to the Death is actually a really good story. Anyway, what happened is when the Daleks found out Tamsin was traveling with the monk, the Daleks deemed Tamsin surplus to requirements and killed her. And that is why the monk has been doing this, because he blames the Doctor for Tamsin's death. He feels that had the Doctor been like him, a meddler, had the Doctor intervened in history, Tamsin would still be alive. And, you know, when that gets revealed, Graham Garden gives a really good performance. This just inconsolable rage, this anger bubbling to the surface. And that is what he's using Sophia and her unique relationship with time for, because, you know, the monk unleashes aliens and they are able to cure the plague. And because the Doctor was unable to stop them, I'm ghosting over the aliens real quick because they play such a small role in this story. But because the Doctor was unable to stop them, the plague of Justinian was unable to play out. And the Time Lords sort of get whiff of this, and because this was supposed to be the first Doctor's era when he's still on the run from the Time Lords, they erase the Doctor from history, and the monk uses Sophia to have him take the Doctor's place. And that's what Episode 4 is. Episode 4 is the monk has assumed the role of the Doctor in a new timeline. Meanwhile, because of Sophia's unique relationship with time, she realizes something's not right, and when she finds the fissure she created and is able to free the Doctor. And this is where Peter Davison's performance really shines. Just the deviousness of his plan. Like, one thing I've sort of noticed is Peter Davison is, the Fifth Doctor, is the most prone to retaliation. I think the only one more vicious than him, so to speak, is the Seventh Doctor. You know, like, he plays the part of the gentleman, he tries to be the nice guy, but when you push him, he will push back. And some of his plans are really brutal. Like in Warriors of the Deep, he unleashed a gas that, while harmless to humans, was extremely toxic to Silurians and Sea Devils. And again, we see that here. The way he combats what the monk has done, the way he's able to figure it out, it's really devious. Like, we kind of get a bit of sort of the Doctor's overall arc, not just the specific character arc, but the Doctor's overall arc of what will turn him into the Seventh Doctor, and even a little bit the War Doctor, which I'm sure wasn't the intention. And then, of course, And just overall, the Secret History, I would say, is phenomenal. It is, like, if I were to rank the Locum Doctors Trilogy, for me, it would be reverse order. It would be The Secret History is the best, Last of the Cybermen, The Defectors is the weakest. You know, great performances, a really good plot, and some really great character moments. Like I said, Vicki is just really good all around in this story. I'm going to give The Secret History a 9 out of 10. And after this, I will be taking a little bit of a hiatus. Like I said, when I reviewed The Defectors, I announced I was doing this on Security Kitchen Productions channel. And in the next couple months, I will be a guest on their channel again for their podcast, The Celestial Podcast, talking about more Big Finish. I will be talking about I will be a guest talking about the main range, 29 to 36, that is, and I may mess up the numbering a little bit, The Chimes of Midnight, Seasons of Fear, Embrace the Darkness, The Time of the Daleks, Neverland, Spare Parts, Ish, and The Rapture. And then, I think it's the month after that, I'll be, again, a guest reviewing the Early Adventures range, Series 1 and Series 2. So, I'm going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus to listen and re-listen to those stories and get prepped for that podcast. After that, though, we will be going into spin-off territory. We will be looking at a complete series, because they won't be doing anymore, that was released between July 2002 and April of 2006. And very recently, Big Finish Productions released the complete series on a bundle. So when I do come back to this channel and review more stuff, we will be looking at Sarah Jane Smith. And that's it for this video. What did you think? Please start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, because subscribe decided it doesn't want to do what it's supposed to do. In the description box below, you'll find the link to my Ko-fi, where you can help support the channel, and you'll find the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.